vision, more images coming in, and maybe I can resolve the problem.
Okay, great demonstration here by Full Self-Drive Beta. This man lost his mask or something and it blew across and he walked in front of us. That was really great. Okay, and we're through the yellow, through the intersection on yellow, which is just fine. Great demonstration of capability there. One thing that the car doesn't do is, as a human driver, of course you're going to do something like this, you know, to wave him on, to let him know, okay, you have the right of way. The car currently doesn't have a capability to do that. However, I think they could do something like flash the headlights. Okay, we're kind of sort of stopped on the road tracks. And now it's clear. A little bit janky, no one behind us really. That's actually an improvement on this intersection over what it's done in the past, so I'm pretty happy with that. We kind of did have our rear on the railroad tracks, which is obviously not the safest thing to do. Although I've never seen a train here. That, of course, doesn't mean there can't be one. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Capabilities to inform pedestrians. Of course, with the new cars that have the pedestrian warning speakers, that essentially is a non-issue because they can easily program in some kind of a voice or some kind of a notification that says you're clear to cross or whatever, you know. So cars that have the pedestrian warning speaker, I think there's really no issue with pedestrians because the car can issue commands potentially to those pedestrians. Older cars like this one that don't have the pedestrian warning speaker, you still have some potential capabilities like flashing the headlights or maybe like a pedestrian chirp on the horn. You know, just like a gentle chirp on the horn to let them know, like, hey, you can go, that type of thing. So that's definitely an issue. Same thing with four-way intersections where it's a little bit questionable for who has the right-of-way. The car could do something like flash the headlights to say, hey, I'm yielding, you proceed through, something like that. So there's definitely, I mean, this whole full self-drive thing, it's a massive, a massive problem, right? There's so much that needs to go into it beyond just driving and not hitting things. I mean, there's communication with other drivers, pedestrians, that type of thing. So you can see why they're looking to hire more engineers, which apparently is the goal of the upcoming Autonomy Day 2, is just more engineering talent, because it's such a broad problem that even if you solve the core task, there's just still so much that you need around the perimeter to really make it, you know, an autonomous agent capable of navigating the world.
You know, especially in these early days of getting robots to work particularly in unstructured settings, you know, just stop it, figure out the problem, and then build from that.
When we talk about understanding what the system can do, one of the things the self-driving industry has done, they've defined these levels of autonomy, right? Level 0, well, level 0 is really nothing's at play. That's a good old-fashioned car. But then there's level 1 through 5 where there's some notion of intelligence in the car that goes up from level 1, and level 5 it's the most intelligent qualification. What do you think about that?
So this is it's an argument that lots of people love to jump in the argument about, are these the right levels? Should we have the levels? And in fact, those levels were built off of some research levels that Tom Sheridan at MIT proposed back in the 70s about just in general thinking about humans and manufacturing robots. And so this idea of levels has been around a long time, and it's funny to me, this is how you know when you're old, as you're starting to see the trends they repeat themselves over and over again. And there was this big outcry against levels of automation for robots and drones, and now there's that big outcry for cars. I'm not emotionally invested in this argument. I don't even think it's really an argument worth having, because human brains, we just love to categorize things. We have to bend things, like an addiction. So you can talk about it however you want. The human brain is always going to categorize capability in some kind of high to low, whatever that's going to be. So I am less concerned about whether or not we're calling things levels of autonomy or levels of automation, whether that's right or whether that's wrong. I'm more concerned that we start to look at the capabilities of a system and match that against the demands of the environment, and potentially if there are going to be humans in the loop, does that system accommodate human error? And I will tell you, I am the first person that wishes we could have self-driving cars. I've got a 14-year-old. I do not want this 14-year-old driving. She is great. I just like the idea of my daughter driving. No, I don't want it. So I would love to be able to get self-driving cars in place right now. What you said before about human.
Okay, interesting here. This person's trying to nose out. We have a green. We're trying to turn left at this intersection. That was handled gracefully. We're trying to go where this white car went, but we're yielding to anyone coming from this direction. No problem there. And then straight around the corner here. No problem. Pedestrian crossing there. And a left turn, and this will be my destination. That's pretty darn close to that curb there, but we missed it. And we're at our destination, so that was great. Really. Man, I can't wait for V9. I just want to see what kind of changes there are. Okay, let's pick a new destination here, if I can get my bearings. Yeah, this intersection up here is interesting. Obviously, there's a lot going on here. Let's just try to go up here and see how it routes us through it. Probably not very interesting. Oh, well, actually, no, that's pretty interesting. Okay, so, yeah, let's do this. It's kind of this weird yield situation. So, yeah, let's try that. Okay, and the first interesting thing is going to be this intersection up here. I'm going to slow this down because we should not be going anywhere close to 25. Okay, look at this. There's so many edge cases, always. Like, here's a person. Is that with a stroller? No, they're on a mobility scooter. Always edge cases everywhere. Okay, and we're actually going to cross. So we stop at this stop sign. This is very interesting. Okay, I'm liking this. This is great. And we're going. I tapped the accelerator there, just because I wanted to go through. But that was handled extremely well. That's one of the more confusing intersections I know of in my local area, just because of the crazy layout. It's not obvious, exactly what you're supposed to do. So that was very good. I was really happy with that. I don't have much to say, so I'm going to turn on my podcast here. It's the Robot Brains podcast. Highly recommended. A lot of good, interesting, smart people talking about autonomy and AI and stuff like that. So we'll listen to that unless I have something to say.
In the loop versus on the loop. The real distinction is humans in the loop are, you can imagine, like, if your hands are on the wheel and you're fully paying attention and something goes wrong, even though you might have cruise control on, you are in the loop because you are engaged, you know what the position of the steering wheel is. What gets dangerous is when you move on the loop, and this is what happens in autopilot, is that the car's driving itself, it's doing a pretty good job, and we've seen multiple...
I completely disagree with that. Obviously, I'm using full self-drive beta now, and I'm fully engaged. This is Missy Cummings. I'm not familiar with her too much, but apparently she's kind of a detractor of autopilot. Anyway, it's an interesting podcast to listen to while we're doing this.
Deaths, and only in one case was a death attributed to a driver on a video game on his phone. The other ones, there was no obvious source of distraction. The drivers obviously got distracted, but we can't say for sure what that was.
The source of distraction.
It can just be, you can drop something on the floor of the car. You can just bend down for just half a second to pick up your phone or the donut that you just dropped, and that's where it's super time critical, and just that momentary glance away can be enough to kill you in a car. So I think that humans on the loop is definitely a harder problem to solve than humans in the loop. But going back to the temporal issues, and that's why you have to understand, that's why you have to design the autonomy to understand not just the environment that the car is operating in, but the environment that the human is in inside that ecosystem, because that's also going to end up defining whether or not your system is successful.
So what I'm hearing is that maybe ideally, it wouldn't be exactly that, but maybe ideally there would be not levels of autonomy so much of a car in your view how things would play out better, but it would be, in some sense, levels of what the human can achieve together with the car. Not sure how that would be quantified, but some notion that human and car together in this situation can achieve this level of safety. A human and car together in this kind of configuration can achieve this level of safety. I imagine that's where a lot of your research goes, not just for cars, but in general, how to quantify the combination of human and machine. And what...
Okay, this drive's going very well. We have some people crossing up here. They are... okay. They were going to go, but then it looked like we weren't going to slow. So then they kind of bailed on their crossing. To be fair, it's not a legal crosswalk area.
It can achieve. How do you do that?
You should be on.
By the way, this drive is going very well so far. It's very smooth. One thing I've noticed a lot, I've had beta for I think over 6 months now, is it's quite obvious to me that the code running in the background is not always consistent. It's like sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't work so well. It's almost like there's just a lot of variability, experimentation going on. And right now I think we're running the good software because everything's going very nicely.
I have a computer science student, PhD student, and they should be on his committee because we're looking at exactly that thing, exactly what you're talking about. We're trying to model the state of the vehicle. Where is the vehicle in at any given time? And then what is the state of the human? Because you can imagine that it's when the vehicle gets into, and we actually look at it as a three-state combination. It's the environment, the car, and the person. And
okay, we'll pause that. Here comes this interesting intersection. It's a four-way stop. And of course, okay, car on the left is fully stopped. We're stopped. They're going. And then I will tap to confirm just so it's not super awkward for everyone else here. That's one problem the car has, is it just waits way too long after it's our turn. So most of the time I'll tap to confirm, which, you know, that's helping provide training data, hopefully. We're clear, and this is a very interesting situation. We kind of like do this weird thing across one lane, and now we're going to merge into the other. And it is clear behind us to the right, and now we have to get over 2 lanes to make a right turn here fairly shortly. The car definitely has troubles typically. Oh, not today though. Typically it has a lot of trouble making rapid lane changes in order to make these turns. But today seems to be an exception, which is great. Now, throw traffic into the mix, and that totally wouldn't work because it's just not aggressive enough. But we just made it. And if you're keeping score, we just did a no intervention drive all the way from point A to point B, really with no drama. So here's a man with his dog. Cute little dog. And we made it. So that was a good drive. Let's find someplace else to go. So based on my experience with Full Self-Drive Beta, we just had a very good drive. I would not be surprised if this next one is not so good because, like I said, they kind of tweak around with the software and you never know what you're going to get. So let's just do something kind of diagonal across. Let's go back in towards this neighborhood here. Well, let's make sure it gets off the main road. See what that gives us. Okay, relatively quite a few intersections and stuff there. One thing you find is the further you go, the more likely it is that you get routed on easy main roads, which makes sense. So sometimes it's actually a little bit difficult to find challenging routes because the road structure naturally... Okay, I'm gonna stop talking here. Okay, cute little dog in the road. He pulls him back. See, if it was me, I would have gotten over sooner, but it worked out just fine. Okay, so we're gonna, oh, this is gonna be a real challenge. So we're gonna go across here. So if you notice, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lanes of traffic. And of course we throw in the factor of this guy here. Oh man, this is going to be tough because it's basically blind to the left. Okay. Okay. If we go now, it's... Are you kidding me? You're going to do it? Okay, this guy. We did it. Okay, there wasn't too much traffic there, but we did just cross 6 lanes of traffic. I do have another situation that I encounter regularly where it's very busy cross traffic like that, and I have seen it nail it multiple times where it's very busy, it finds a gap and it takes it. I'll have to get that on video because it's super impressive. Anyway, I'm talking too much because I'm a little bit excited because things are going pretty well, but let's go back to the podcast.
And all 3 of those get to a high uncertainty state, that's when you're going to have an accident. You know, humans aren't paying attention, low sun angle at the end of the day, car sensor struggling to do lane detection or has some other inherent problem. You know, and it's when all of those start to combine that you really get high risk states. So indeed, that is what we're doing for research. And it is really hard because you have to, trying to model non-determinism in just physical systems is hard enough. And in humans, it's very hard because we have such wide variability. So I try not to model humans per the mean human, the average human, because that doesn't really tell you anything. What we really look at is the boundaries of human performance. You know, like what is the worst possible state? And in a car, you have to assume that a person is not paying attention. So that is the worst state that the human can be in.
Now, then I would imagine what you actually want, instead of outward-facing cameras to the road, you want inward-facing cameras that actually catch the human being distracted and somehow get them to pay attention again. You have a whole other computer vision problem then.
That's right. So now they're layered.
Okay, it's going to be clear after this white car. I would go now. The car is a little bit delayed. That was no intervention by me. Good.
Vision, but indeed, even Tesla now has turned on their in-car camera to monitor the driver. So driver monitoring systems that are camera-based have been around for a long time. So it's generally accepted that in the driving community, you're going to have that information.
Now, one thing I wonder, when you look at, I have a Tesla, and when I put it on autopilot, I'm here. It's done well so far, I guess. But I look at the statistics, I'm like, okay, well, I've been in this car maybe, I don't know, a few thousand miles on autopilot, right? But the statistics is that even humans only get into accidents every 500,000 miles. So for me to personally experience it to be better than an average human driver, that's what the statistics are, I would need to sit in it for 500,000 miles. After 500,000 miles, it doesn't have an accident, then I would know, actually, you know, if I think I'm worse than the average human driver, maybe this thing is better than me. If I think I'm better, maybe I need to see a bit more evidence, right? So I'm curious how you think about those numbers, because maybe we can never be perfect, right? With any system, even humans are not perfect, though we try to get as close as possible with everything we do. When might the numbers be good enough that it's just like, okay, these numbers, it's better than human kind of number?
Yeah, I think that is a very tricky question because it's all miles are not the same. So, you know, if you're driving on the...
Okay, no one behind us. So when there's a white bounding box, you probably can't see on camera. That means we're yielding. We're yielding to this guy for no reason right now. And then he turns right there. So really weird. Like we're yielding to the traffic that's going behind us. It's super awkward and weird. There's no one really around that it was a factor, so I let it go just to show that. But typically I'll confirm with the stock just to get going, because it's kind of strange why it's yielding to someone opposite direction until they're like 40 feet behind us.
One in the Bay Area, that is perhaps the most well-mapped interstate in the country for self-driving cars. Indeed, whenever I come out there, one of my friends loves to take me out in his Tesla so he could show me what idiots all the other Tesla drivers are being. We'll just drive up and down the 101, and he loves to show me what people...
That's a snapshot. That was kind of a strange little... Okay, we're gonna ramp to this apparently. Oh yeah, ooh, we just about got air. I'll snapshot that too. Okay, we're a little bit aggressive here. There's someone behind me. They probably saw us just about ramp. Okay, I'll disengage there next time because that was... And see, as a human, like I'm like, this is too fast. And sure enough, it was too fast.
are doing that are crazy in Teslas. So I think that your interstate miles, it's not surprising to me that you've never had a problem. Indeed, most people who are responsible drivers and who are using the Tesla in the way that it's intended don't have a problem. Where this starts to break down is when Teslas are used outside their operational domains that they should be in. So Tesla will tell you that the autopilot system and even full self-driving, they're optimized for the interstate, but they will still let you use it on divided highways and still let you use it in urban environments. And this is where we're starting to see problems. And this
just tap to confirm, just get going. What she's talking about here is absolutely true, and that's why full self-drive is currently in the limited beta program. You have to be a vigilant driver. This is amazing, absolutely incredible human technology. Like, we are at the cutting edge and we're on the cusp of actual full self-driving, but you can't let your bottom 25% driver who is on their cell phone all the time, you just can't have that right now at this current state. If there's some kind of vetting program, using the internal camera, where if it catches you on your phone, like even one strike, you're out for like a week or something like that. I could see a program like that. 2 strikes, maybe 1 warning, and then next time you're out for a full week. I could see something like that, allowing a wider beta release. But until we have something like that in place, you just can't have this out in the hands of your average distracted, driver who doesn't, for whatever reason, grasp the importance of the task that they're doing. So I think there's solutions there, but until the solutions are in place, this is just going to be limited release for lucky people, apparently.
Back to human habituation. We've known this for a long time in aviation, that automation that's pretty good is actually more dangerous than automation that's terrible, because automation that's pretty good lulls you into a false sense of security. So it makes you think that the automation is more capable. And indeed, for the people who have died, they fell into that trap.
And this is a dangerous trap, and I am getting quite comfortable with full self-drive beta, but I have to remind myself, it can do the worst thing at the worst possible time, such as an interesting intersection like this.
Put more faith and more trust in the autonomy than they should have, but likely in a Pavlovian response, because the car had performed so well for them for so long. So when you ask me, is there a mile? Missy, give me the metric for when I know my car is safe. And I'll tell you, well, first of all, it's not some number of miles driven. It would actually have to be some number of miles driven in all those domains where uncertainty is high. So right after a rain shower, static objects on the freeway, and we've seen Teslas ram in many times into static objects on the freeway. Indeed, I think this is one of the reasons why Elon thinks that by getting rid of the radar, he can get rid of this problem. But then there will be new problems. The white truck, the side of the truck that wasn't seen by the vision system because the system couldn't discriminate sky from the white side of the truck. So what bothers me and what worries me is that we're still almost in this, and as academia, that's kind of where you would expect. We're still learning things about this technology and where we need to fix it. And that's okay from a research perspective, because that's where we should be. But you're talking about a deployed technology that's available for commercial operation, and we should not be being surprised by technology that we say is ready to be available for public use. And Tesla would come back to me and say, oh, it's beta. We told everybody it was beta. You're driving a beta. And, I have a real problem with people testing their software in safety critical systems on the general public. And
I do not have a problem with that. I think this is fantastic, and I think that responsible people testing this software is unbelievable. So obviously I disagree with what she's saying there. I think there's different approaches, and I think the approach that they're taking by letting the general public use the software, I think it's the way to go. This is one of the most amazing experiences of my life, so I obviously disagree.
Although I will argue, every time I'm critical of Tesla, I have to block about 100 people on Twitter, because the Teslarati just will come after you if they think that you're being critical of the car. But people
Valid. Okay, once again, we just did a no disengagement drive. I intervened a few times. I tapped this once or twice to go through intersections. I tapped the accelerator. I didn't say it, but I tapped the accelerator just to kind of help force it through one of these intersections here on the roundabout. Other than that, that was a completely no disengagement drive. Not particularly easy either. Let's find something else interesting. Oh, you just want to do the reverse of what we just did? Sure. Let's try the reverse of what we just did.
You shouldn't be testing a system, and this is true for any system. You shouldn't be using your customers to do the testing that you are too cheap to do.
Disagree. I just disagree.
Yourself.
I like your advocacy, and that's one part of what you're, of course, engaged in. But the other part is that you're actually trying to solve the problem in your lab at Duke, right? You are
There's a cat. Didn't see it depicted on here.
looking at how to even understand this problem, which is so hard because, I mean, machines are hard enough to understand, and now you're trying to understand humans and machines, and together make them more capable. And humans are so much more complex than pretty much any machine, at least any machine I know. And so, how do you even set up a research program that involves, you know, this complexity of studying both humans and machines, and ask the right questions?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think if you talk to, 5 different incredibly successful academics where their inspiration comes from or how they organize their life, you're going to get, 10 different responses from those 5 academics. I am very fortunate that it's people like Elon Musk that provide me with all the inspiration that I need. I mean, there's so many real world problems happening today, obviously in the self-driving, driving assist, and I love to pull my research questions from the world that I live in. I am definitely not a theoretician in the sense that I don't sit back and think about quarks and photons, and that's just not who I am. I am thinking about, and I'm an engineer, right? We've got technology, it's in the world, and I need to make technology safer, given the fact that we know that humans are, they can just be so unpredictable, and indeed they're predictable in their unpredictability. So trying to figure out how to bound that problem, I think, is difficult. But I just finished one project that was, it's another good example of a collaboration between humans and vision. So a couple of years ago, before COVID started, Pfizer reached out to me because they were having issues with their research fermentation units. So they actually, before they start fermenting vaccines at scale, they actually have smaller versions of that, and because they're trying to make sure that they know how to grow the vaccine correctly inside the little units so that they can scale it. And so they were having a real problem with inside these research vaccine units, and biology and chemistry were my worst areas, so I really had to do a lot of learning to get up to speed in this effort. But it turns out you've got to have some, it's like brewing, by the way. It's like you have to have some foaming inside when you grow a vaccine.
Those double roundabouts there, I did help it through with the accelerator. It did all the steering itself, but I did assist with the accelerator just to kind of coax it to go through at the appropriate time.
You need to have foaming for the same reasons, you need to make sure that there's enough oxygen and that the cell culture is growing. And so we need foam, but too much foam can actually causes a huge chemical.
Also, for the record, this video that you're watching right now, my intention is I'm going to upload it, I think, just uninterrupted from start to finish. I started the video after I started the drive. So far, it's been 37 minutes, 14.2 miles. With no disengagements. I haven't disengaged via the steering wheel or the brake pedal yet. I've assisted a few times with the gear selector for like 4-way stops, and then the accelerator pedal a few times just to kind of get it to go at the appropriate time. But yeah, very good drive so far. We'll see if this continues. I guess I'll just have this be a long format video, and then maybe we'll stop it, I don't know, at the first disengagement or something like that. Maybe not. We'll see.
Biological spill inside of a facility, and that's bad. And so this research vaccine fermentation foaming problem is still unknown to scientists. We don't know how to predict it. We don't know everybody's tried every statistical model on the planet, looking at all these different variables, and no one has been able to come up with a successful model. This is actually great for model-free estimation using some kind of machine learning, because we've got a sight glass and we can actually tell as the foam grows, the vision can actually track when it might get to a place where it's going to explode in the next few minutes. And by the way, every one of these little research vaccine units, they have their own personality. And there's not one model that can apply to all of them. You actually have to train a model on each of your units. And then what we do is we loop the human in. So we have a vision system that loops into an app. So we built an app for the scientists to walk around with. And so if it was starting to creep up and, there's not a hard prediction that it's about to go, but, you're starting to get into concerning areas, the scientists, wherever they are, can actually...
Okay, that was pretty impressive, because if you notice, there were absolutely no lines whatsoever. And we chose pretty much the reasonable path through that entire area there, with a car on our right side. I'll have to look at the video to see, what the car was showing up here. But yeah, that looked good to me.
Look on their phone and say, okay. Or I've seen this before because I know the personality of this little reactor, so that's not concerning. Or maybe it is. And in this way, the human and the autonomy, they're sharing their predictions. And indeed, that would be the next step of this research, is to see if the human and vision system working together could actually improve that over time. Because we would ideally love to fully automate that. The scientists hate babysitting this fermentation unit, but we're just not there yet where we can get with high enough accuracy to basically leave it alone, and the consequences are high for a spill. So it's that kind of, we go into a system, we figure out role allocation, like what's the best thing for the automation or autonomy to be doing? What strengths does the human have?
I just confirmed there, just to give ourselves the right of way through that intersection.
What weaknesses do both of these have? And then we try to build a system where the human is providing the backup for the weaknesses of the autonomy, and the autonomy is backing up the human.
It's interesting. I didn't even know vaccines were grown through fermenting. That's a whole surprise to me. I'm really curious when you say every little one of them can have a different process play out. Why do you think that is? What's different from one to the next?
And this is where your guess is as good as mine. And so when we were working with Pfizer, we actually they had older versions that they then replaced with newer versions. So we got to see them put in brand new units, exactly the same, at least per the manufacturing standards. And immediately they all started having different personalities. The brand new one.
Okay, let's see how we do here. Good. That was very good.
Right. So, and in theory, and that's actually the thing that I think this is where model-free estimation is very helpful, because we just can't figure it out. We don't know whether, if there's some specification of some valve inlet, if it's just maybe, 0.01% difference, is that enough to cause it? I mean, because and this is the reality of real world manufacturing, that you've got maybe all these tolerances everywhere. But it also goes to the growth of cell cultures, like, cells do whatever they want, and we kind of know how they work, but we also don't have a full appreciation for the cell growth process, how they're interacting with each other and potentially driving that same process.
I really like that you are, as you do your research, you go into the real world and try to really understand what's happening there, what's missing, and bring it back into your research activities. And recently you did a sabbatical at Amazon. Can you say a bit more about that? What did you see there, and how has that inspired your research?
Working with Amazon Robotics was really great, because I got to see how robots and people, how the world is changing.
Okay, that was kind of abnormally janky, that turn. It wasn't too unusual, other than it was kind of sloping upward. So I'm not sure why it was a little bit slow and delayed there, but it was ultimately successful.
Manufacturing.
Okay, so here's another left turn across a lot of traffic. I don't know about this. For one, we have to cross over like multiple lanes in order to make the right turn up here. It's occluded to the right from a berm. It's clear. I can see if the car creeps forward about 5 feet, it will be okay. It's not clear now. We do have a central turn lane. It's clear right now if it goes, but now there's a car from the left. I need one of those 360 cameras. Okay, after this black car, it's gonna be clear if it goes now. If it goes now. If it goes now. Okay, there's a Jeep on the left, but it's still clear. Okay, I tapped the accelerator because it kind of like paused in the middle of the road, which was unusual. Okay, car on the right. Okay, car behind us. Get over. Okay, this might work. So I did tap it. Okay, this is working. So I tapped it just in the road there because it was pausing for some reason, kind of in the middle of the road with traffic. Awesome. I call it a success. A couple, minor accelerator interventions there. But ultimately, I call that a highly successful drive. Always room for improvement. Cool. And we made it. We're at that same location we were last time. Okay, let's push this a little bit more since we're having a lot of success today. Let's push it kind of to more downtown type area. Okay, let's see here. Where do we want to go? Let's start working our way. Let's start working our way up into this area. So let's just go right. We'll call it Best Buy. That's Best Buy. Okay, and of course, when you're traveling longer distances, you get routed onto bigger, more mainline roads, which tend to be a little bit easier to handle. But this is point A to point B, right? So we'll say that we live at this house up back here that we just departed from, and we're going to Best Buy. And we'll see how this does for us. Once again, like I said, from drive to drive, sometimes it seems like the code behind the scenes changes as far as what, what software it's running, so this might be a whole lot worse. That's a stop sign that we kind of blew through, but it was clear I could see. So since I could see it was clear, we'll assume the car could see it was clear. And okay, let's see how we go here.
So up to now, not just even in warehouse manufacturing, but in automotive production lines, many different factories, there have been zones of exclusion. Robots are in one area, humans are in another. And for the longest time, that guarantees safety, and not completely, but for the most part, those you can have good, nice, safe operations that are highly predictable. But unfortunately, to be able to completely automate some warehouses, which by the way, I would love to do.
I just noticed that gasoline and diesel are the same price here. $2.95 a gallon. I always thought diesel was more expensive, but right now at least they're the same price in Illinois. So yeah, $2.95 a gallon. I don't really keep track of that anymore, but that doesn't seem too terrible.
Because it's no secret that Amazon has experienced increased incident and accident rates of its...
Okay, we're trying to get over. It's clear if we do so right now. Come on, car, do it. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. There we go. Okay. Drivers behind us are slightly patient. It wasn't terribly rude, but it could have been a little bit more aggressive.
Workers, and their accident rates are higher in the robotic warehouses. Then that raises the question of okay, well, even if you think that you can fully automate something, it's harder than it sounds, and especially in these areas of unstructured interaction. So, we can have robots move goods around in maybe safe areas where there are no humans, but if you really want to get the economies of scale.
Okay, that wasn't fantastic. I was okay with it stopping at the yellow. No problems there. We started that turn, and for some reason it started braking immediately after it was starting that turn. I did have a car behind me, so I tapped the accelerator just to let it know that it was okay and safe to go. Honestly, that's one of the biggest potential issues with this current software, is that since it does drive somewhat robotically, in situations like that where you start to go and it's obviously clear and safe to do so, and then it will immediately stop because it has a little freak out for whatever reason, the human driver behind you, although it'd be their fault for rear-ending you, sometimes I feel like it could put you in a situation where you get rear-ended, just because the other human drivers aren't paying attention. And what are we up? That's, I think, our first disengagement. And that was just for kind of a weird lane excursion there. So okay, that's the first one. I think it probably could have been okay not to disengage, but worst comes to worst, that's just flagging the information for Tesla, and whatever break in the lines caused that, they can hopefully refine that. So we'll call that the first disengagement, although it probably could have made it just fine without that, but it is what it is.
You're going to have to start having humans and robots work in the same environment, and that's when that uncertainty goes way up. So
she's talking about exactly what I was talking about. The humans and the robots, the car being the robot, work in the same environment. When the robot doesn't do something that's totally natural, the human kind of is left wondering what's going on here. So
I learned a lot from Amazon about the real world nature of these problems. I also learned a lot about standardizations and how we might need to rethink the way that we have standards, we try to adhere to them, and or maybe they're put upon companies by different governments, but that creates some problems when the technology is far outpacing standards. And so I still think there's a lot of work to be done in rethinking the development of standards, because right now I really do not see a set of standards that I think are appropriate for unstructured human-robot interaction. And so I think there's just still so much work to be done. And that actually takes a lot of research.
Now, of course, Amazon has multiple types of robots. There is mobile robots that transport things, and there's manipulation robots that do what we do with hands effectively. Do you think it's very different what to think about between the mobile robots and the manipulation robots?
Generally, the issues are similar, although the manifestation of them are going to be slightly different. Mobile robots where you're moving item A across a warehouse is going to be different than if you're picking up a different item B and maybe handing it to a human, right? There's proximity issues, there's speed issues, whether or not, what's the actual physical extent of damage that could be done? What are the failure modes? Failure mode analysis is really changing, and I would like to see, including myself, do more research in...
Okay, that was interesting and good. So the speed limit went from, I think, I'm not sure, 45 to 35 or something like that, and I have a +5 offset. It was a much more gradual ease into slowing down than I've seen. A lot of times it's more jarring. So that seemed a little bit more gentle than I'm used to, which is good. Still, though, didn't stop the dummy behind me from, closing 45 feet closer to me, even though I had a gradual slowdown. There's a very good reason that this software is not in the hands of your average driver, because your average driver is terrible. I notice that a lot, especially with Full Self-Driving Beta, because I'm hyper vigilant, more so than normal, about my surroundings, which is one reason I think this makes me a safer driver, is because I don't have to focus 100% on the driving task. I can kind of gain situational awareness around me. So anyway, I paid a lot of attention, probably more so than normal, in the mirrors of other drivers, and you just see how terrible they are. Delayed reaction times, and just, there's a reason this software is not out to everyone. But I feel bad because there are a lot of people out there watching this video right now who have every capability of safely supervising it. I'm no special driver. I do think I'm a fairly safe driver and vigilant, but there's many people out there equally capable. And yep, these are some teenage drivers.
Understanding, how can you help companies and engineers understand what the scope...
I'm going to help it through here, because I did have some traffic behind me. So I tapped the accelerator just to get it cruising through there.
Failure modes can be without having to rely on historical evidence to show.
Okay, so we're not there yet, but it looks like we're going to make it to Best Buy fairly successfully. So once we get there, I'm going to set one final destination that's going to force it to go through a historically very difficult situation. It's been a number of months since I've tried it, so we'll see how it does. And then we'll probably end the video there. But it should be a left turn, I think, at this intersection here. Very good. Ah, come on. Ah, man. You can never count your chicks till they're hatched, right? So just a weird deviation there out of the turn lane. That's what I get for thinking it's gonna... You can't let your guard down, that's the thing, because it's always gonna do something weird. There could have been a car beside me, although if there was, I think it's less likely it would have done that. But you can't let your guard down because it's always gonna do something weird. Still though, this overall has been very good for the most part, so I'm quite happy with today's performance as we're on the cusp of version 9. Elon Musk says next week, potentially. He used the word hopefully next week. I give that a very low probability of happening. Well, oh man, who knows? I can't guess any better than anyone else. Although, it's quite obvious that version 9 is getting close. But when he says hopefully next week, out to beta, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll be looking at second week of July or something like that. But I'd be happy if it's next week, of course. Anyway, thanks for sticking along this long in the video. I know it's kind of boring, but the podcast helps out. We're almost to Best Buy, and like I said, I'll put the last destination in after that, and we'll see how it does in that last maneuver. I guess I'll take this time just to kind of mention, like, there's a lot of naysayers out there about full self-driving, but I'm here to tell you I've had this since December. It's not perfect, it's not a solved problem yet, but from my seat here, which is in the driver's seat of full self-drive beta, it is quite obvious to me that we made it. It is quite obvious to me that Tesla is well on the way to solving this full self-driving problem. See, I'm driving now, this person's parking. Yeah, a lot of naysayers online. Who knows what their interests are, what their angle is on what they're saying. A lot of naysayers. I'm here to say this is going to happen. It's not perfect today, but I think it's beyond obvious that this is going to work out just fine. Okay, so I'm actually going to navigate to, we'll just put a destination here. Let's make this our final destination, I don't know, right here. And let's see how it routes us. That's not what I want, but I'm going to manually drive just to force the nav to recalculate. So I'm manually driving now, which is something I very rarely do, honestly. The number of miles I've driven manually since December when I got full self-drive beta is extremely small. I'm talking like tenths of a mile at any time, typically. Literally tenths of a mile is about how far I manually drive since December with full self-drive beta. Okay, so it's rerouted. So let's keep the speed under control here just so that we have our best chance of success. But yeah, it's going to force us through this very interesting situation here. It's probably going to fail just because there's a lot of action points. We have to change multiple lanes with a lot of traffic. This is kind of just the capstone for today to see how we do. But yeah, I've driven very short distances manually, and it's only just for those situations where you have to intervene to, get it out of a situation or something like that. Other than that, since December, mid-December, when I received full self-drive beta, I essentially have not driven at all, basically. I mean, there's been hundreds, if not thousands, of disengagements, which provide training data. But for the majority of the driving task, it's all full self-drive beta. So here we go into the situation. I've done multiple snapshots and I've sent multiple emails about this particular intersection, so hopefully it's had some specific engineering eyes on it. So, for one, we have this median here that's kind of hard to see. We correctly get in this lane here. Ideally, we should be in the right turn lane. So there's two turn lanes. That is interesting there. Okay, we're getting in the turn lane I would not advise to get into. because now we have to do a double hop over across all this traffic in order to make our on-ramp up here. So very unlikely this works, but that's what we're testing here. With that white car that crossed in front of us there, I don't know how you look at that. I think it's kind of scary letting the computer do that. However, I don't think it necessarily would be scary if I were the one performing that maneuver. So it's kind of a matter of perspective a lot of times. Sometimes it seems scary when you're not in control, even though if you are in control, you might have done a very similar thing. I think personally I would have waited a little bit more. And also, of course, I would be in this other turn lane because it just sets us up for, you know, this on-ramp here. So, yeah, we'll see how this plays out. Okay, here comes our green arrow. And we're going. I'm going to actually reduce my follow distance to 1 right now. I don't know if that's going to help. Okay. There we are. Okay. It's clear. We need to get over in that turn lane. It's actually clear if we just do it. We're not going to do it though. We're trying. It's clear. I'm looking in the mirror. It's clear. This truck, oh, that worked. It was kind of awkward and rude. This person stopped for an imaginary on-ramp. That worked. This blue truck behind us had to be quite patient with me in order, because I kind of dove in front of him there. Yeah, that actually worked. You could tell it wasn't as graceful as it could have been, but I am pretty excited about that. Okay, now we're just reverting back to nav on autopilot, and okay. We'll call that video complete. I'm gonna just upload this whole thing. I think we had a couple of disengagements, pretty simple ones. Nothing too scary or extraordinary there, but I mean, we just drove an hour, 24 miles with really nothing too crazy happening. I'm going to upload this video in its entirety and make of it what you will. I'm just here to say that I've been using this since December. Full self-driving is going to happen. There's just so much crazy conspiracy negativity online you read about full self-drive beta and how it's never going to work, it can't work. I use it every day and it works. It's not perfect, but from what I've seen, it's entirely not an insurmountable problem to fix the problems they have. I mean, from my seat right here, it's clear that it's a software and data problem, as people say. I mean, I really don't think that it's impossible. I think that they have what they need. I think that they're going to be able to solve this. So anyway, we'll leave it there, and hopefully the next one is version 9.